When I think of the word destruction, I can imagine our brains, my brain, spiraling out of control with vivid illustrations of combustion. I can think of spontaneous window breakage. I can think of soot clogging the atmosphere. I can think of buildings crashing to the ground due to natural disasters. I can think of lava splattering out of the mouth of a volcano. And on a really good day, the day that I love, I can think of the sweet eruption of a piece of mint plunging into a carbonated beverage. There are a lot of bizarre and heart-wrenching images our brains conjure up when the word destruction emerges, although it is never an image of ourselves. Self-destruction is sometimes, or is known as self-sabotage. When one self-sabotages, hinder, restrict ourselves, and if we're being honest, let's deem it as the bane of our existence. I have rather hesitant to tell my truth today, not because I didn't have much to say, but for the level of honesty and transparency I have chosen to share with my environment. I have often questioned my losses, how and why they came to be. Now, one could argue that in fact, our wins are far more fulfilling and joyous to share. Often I think to myself about the kind of person I'd be if I hadn't handed my losses the opportunity to define me for a very long time. I wondered, now where had I purchased such a narrative from? The narrative of being inadequate. This unhealthy, self-woven story dominated my decision-making. I handed it the power to define my capability. I handed it the power to rob me of my joy. Now, I wasn't only cultivating harmful stories about my potential, but I was fluently speaking the language of self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is any behavior, action, or thought we subconsciously allow to hinder us from reaching our fullest potential. Certainly, our ideas of reaching our fullest potential are subjective and equally brilliant. We recognize how harmful self-sabotaging is, although we cannot always fully fathom why we continue to indulge in it. We continue to indulge in it, and then it becomes a repetitive cycle. Now, to lighten the baggage of curiosity, I'll gladly shed some light onto the topic. There are a myriad of ways to self-sabotage. Although today, the pivot of our discussion will be self-criticism. When we don't fully understand the power of our language use, how it holds the ultimate potential to construct and deconstruct our world, we're effortlessly able to demean not only ourselves, but the people in our spaces and normalize it. We proudly say that we're being honest, that we're being constructive, without acknowledging how much of a prolonged impact negative self-talk has on us. So let's play a little reflective game, a game which requires honesty. Just by a show of hands, how many of you here have secretly indulged in negative self-talk? Secretly said things like, I don't deserve it. I was certainly saying that this morning. I'm not good enough. Me, lying on the floor yesterday, trying to fathom why I had to be here this morning. And lastly, I can't do it. I whispered this to myself before I came on stage. Let's take a look at where this voice comes from. I'll start by introducing you to either a friend or a foe. Our inner critic. Our inner critic is a small yet powerful voice which exists in our heads. It often causes distraction by expressing judgment. The critic effortlessly grades our ideologies, intellect, emotion, appearance, and capability. For example, in regards to appearance, I have always loved my pot belly. Now, I know pot bellies aren't things people come to love. And years ago, I couldn't stand in front of the mirror without the critic asking in a harsh, mocking tone, "What in God's name is that?" It said things like, "Everyone laughs at you when you take your shirt off," and "Exercise more. The world thinks you should exercise more." It made me feel extremely self-conscious. Now let's reflect. How did the critic come into being? Our inner voices are formed during childhood. The manner in which we're spoken to sets the platform of our self-belief. We absorb things mentioned to us during interactions with family members and acquaintances and caretakers, and then internalize them. Every year I go back home to Ghana for Christmas. While I'm always thrilled to return, I find that a part of me will do nothing but fret. Fret about how I'll respond to comments such as, "Hey, Mommy Agbo, what have you been eating over there?" Which translates as, "Big woman, what have you been eating over there?" I also continue to think about comments such as, "You know, your auntie's wearing your size when you were your age." And at least my personal favorite, "You're such a fine girl." Fine girls, they don't look your size, though. Over the years, my responses have transitioned from nods coupled to forced smiles and finally to rage. My environment placed an unfathomable amount of pressure on me to feel a certain way about my body. I imbibed it. I absorbed all the comments like a sponge. The comments became the foundation of my belief system about appearance. On the other hand, what happens when negative self-talk manifests because of excessive pressure from my environment? For example, I've always been known to be a daunting girl, someone who is highly intelligent, someone who possessed wisdom beyond my youthful years. However, I know that I'm someone who also struggles to meet deadlines. I knew that my grades were plummeting. I knew that I was suffering from mental illnesses I couldn't speak about. But these aren't things audacious, highly intelligent people speak about, are they? Had I just been conditioned to think so? Negative self-talk affects our well-being in an unhealthy manner, and it decreases our confidence. When we aren't working to unlearn our childhood trauma for whatever reasons, it takes up a ton of our emotional space within us. This then hinders us from living a full, healthy life. I grew tired of being told, "Just let it go," or "That's the way they are," or "They're just family," or "People will be people." However, I felt it was still my responsibility to alter my mental state. I felt that I was still the owner of my body in its entirety. An illustrious psychologist named Leaf describes self-compassion as being able to extend compassion to yourself in times of feeling inadequate. It is being able to realize that with the power of self-compassion, we're able to work through our setbacks and phobias. The first step I took was introspection, which happens to be another word for self-evaluation. This is the process when one critically evaluates their actions or thoughts. Through introspection, I was able to work backwards. I was able to admit without judgment that I had held myself back from reaching my fullest potential. Which leads me to my second point, acknowledgement. I must admit, acknowledgement was one of the most difficult parts, but it had to be done. I began to acknowledge how negative self-talk narrowed my perception on beauty or what my fullest potential looked like. I had to remind myself that it didn't make me inadequate for feeling a certain way in the past. Which brings me to my last point. which brings me to the most honest part of my speech. I wish I had known when I started practicing self-compassion that there'd be many nights that I'd relapse and I still wouldn't believe in myself. There'd be days I'd sleep on the floor because I couldn't get to my bed because negative self-talk crippled me. I wish I had known that there'd be times when opportunities came up and I desperately wanted to reach out and grab them, but I couldn't. And it didn't matter because I was in the process of still learning to be self-compassionate. I was in the process of being kind to myself. I was in the process of relearning and unlearning and relearning and learning and relearning and unlearning. It is a continuous process of being kind to yourself. Patience propelled me. Through self-compassion, I have been able to build resilience. I'm able to go on and be that daunting girl, that fearless girl, that girl full of ambition. Through self-compassion, I have been able to say yes to myself. I'm saying yes to myself, and I'll continuously say yes to myself. Thank you.